The joys of cheat codes, well, when publishers used to put them in games, were truly a joy to behold, helping you out in the trickiest of situations or saving you the repetition of having to do the same early levels over and over. But did you know there are codes that actually improve your game? No, I don't mean to negate your need to get good. Oh no. Some codes were put in by those devious devs to actually help enhance the game itself, such as improving the frame rate and screen resolution, making these titles infinitely better than how the publisher originally intended you to play them. So, this episode, we take a look at these convalesced codes, these promoted passwords, and these ameliorated amendments. As I say. But hello you. I'm Guru Larry, and I welcome you to Fact Hunt. Performance enhancing cheats in console games. Vigilante 8 is a vehicle combat game from 1998 and is no relation to the Vigilante Man combat game by IREM 10 years prior. In this 70s themed car-based shoot 'em up, it's your duty to speed around the open landscape, collecting the power-ups and blast the opposing automobile enemies at high speed. Although what actually happens is you crash into the side of someone and then the winner is decided by who is better at doing donuts. This glaring design flaw aside, it's still a fun game and one that pushed a Nintendo 64 in terms of graphics. So much so that if you had a Nintendo 64 expansion pack installed into your console, the game would offer a resolution toggle in the pause menu. Changing the toggle to high would set the game to run at a mind-bending 480 by 360 pixel mode. Ooh! However, still with the expansion pack inserted, if you went into the options menu, then to the password section and entered the code max_resolution, although you would be sacrificing frame rate, the game would then run at a frankly ludicrous 640 by 480 pixel mode. Now, you've obviously been watching emulation footage so far, but here's what the max resolution mode looks like running on a real Nintendo 64. Yup, it's a choppy, borderline unplayable mess. Which is probably the reason why the developer hid this mode behind a secret password in the first place. Sega Rally for the Saturn was one of the console's highest rated and biggest selling games. So when the highly anticipated sequel arrived on Sega's new Dreamcast console with a wildly erratic frame rate, it was as disappointing as seeing Konami announcing a new Castlevania project only for it to turn out to be an NFT art scam. The conversion was decent enough, although when put side by side with the arcade version, it's clear that even to get to this state the game had been nerfed. However, there was a way to gimp the game's graphics even further. If on the game's title screen you enter the code up A, down, down, left, right, B, B, down, the game would now remove such elements as dynamic scenery objects, crowds, and terrain graphic effects like mud splashes. But why would you want to do this? Well, with all these graphics removed, the game would run far smoother. Not perfect, but at least the frame rate was now not as rocky as the game's rally tracks. So, just how much of an effect did this have on the game? Well, here's some side-by-side footage for you so you can really get an idea of just how much had to be cut. You'll no doubt notice that with the cheat enabled, a lot of the trackside detail has mimicked Sega's market share, and just vanished. It's pretty obvious that, at the end of the day, this version of Sega Rally 2 was just rushed by Sega to be out in time for the launch window of the Dreamcast in Japan. So the developers tried to soften the blow by adding the secret performance mode into the game. When the game came out to the West over 10 months later, instead of optimising the game, they just kneecapped it by locking down the frame rate to just 30 frames a second. And just in case you still had any interest in the game, Sega also removed the online play mode that was in the Japanese release. So, thanks Sega. Vega. Please subscribe. Please. Stuffing a simian into a casual toy container and then having it rolling around navigating screwball scramble style levels sounds like a concept that will be thrown out by any sensible games developer. So obviously, this is a Sega game. Starting life out as an arcade game before quickly turning into a Nintendo GameCube launch title, Sega's Primate Puzzler soon became a popular series. So Sega, in their infinite wisdom, decided to bring the game to a handheld machine. That's right, the Nokia N-Gage. This, presumably, was some sort of joke release, so they also ported the game to the Game Boy Advance. But squeezing the game down to fit Nintendo's Pocket machine meant that some serious scaling back had to be done in terms of graphics. To be fair though, even getting the game to run in this state is quite the accomplishment. Although, where this all falls apart is in the game's later levels, where the more complex stages utterly tank the game's performance to borderline unplayable. The developer must have known about this issue, so they included a secret mode in the game. If you enter left, left, right, right, down, down, A on the title screen, you will then be able to play in what's called Super Blocky mode. Now the game's already pixelated graphics turn into an almost nightmarish vision of itself. However, the upside of lowering the resolution is a bump in frame rate, which really does make a difference the deeper into the game you go. One thing that can't be remedied though is the frankly awful control system. Being forced to play this game on a D-pad rather than an analog stick is tantamount to torture. Still, it could have been worse. Around Christmas of 1999 and March 2000, Roadsters released to mediocre reception on both the Nintendo 64 and Sega Dreamcast. An unremarkable racing game that's, well, average by today's standards, but even at the turn of the millennium, it wasn't anything special. In any normal scenario, the Dreamcast version should have come up as the better of the two. But despite having better graphics, the gameplay is actually worse, thanks to some obscenely poor driving physics. However, the Nintendo 64 port was the more enjoyable to play. Plus, if you own the expansion pack, you can improve the base game with improved textures and graphics and keep the game at a respectable 30 frames a second. But you could also marginally improve on mediocrity with the aid of a secret cheat code. On the driver select screen, you had the ability to rename your character, and if you rename them to Extra Res, you'd give the game's resolution a bump to resemble what you've been looking at the whole time in this video. So now armed with this extra information, if you happen to own this game, you now know you can input a cheat code to improve the graphics before you once again leave it on the shelf and play a far better Nintendo 64 racing game instead. Sega's premier 90s Mario killer was a smash hit when released on the Sega Mega Drive, running as fast as you can, smashing TVs and legging it through checkpoints like you've attended a riot in London. Sonic was already a well-crafted game, with its large sprites, smooth scrolling and fantastic soundtrack. But there was a way to improve the game that European and American gamers were playing, and that was to buy the Japanese release instead. The version released in the Land of the Rising Sun saw multiple graphical effects added to it over the Western release, like the water effects you can see on screen right now used in the labyrinth zone that cause the background to sway. However, there is another improvement you can make no matter which version of the game you own, and that affects how the special stage moves. Jumping into the big ring at the end of the level sends you to a special stage to try and win a Chaos Emerald. The stage sort of ticks along as it rotates around. Some people say this stage gives them motion sickness, but then again they should try Sonic Generations then with a first person mod while in VR. Their heads would explode. Anyway, back to the Mega Drive game. If you use a Game Genie and input a certain code depending on which region cartridge you have, you can actually smooth out rotation scrolling. This, however, didn't make the game any easier when I played it, as I'm so used to waiting for certain cues in a rotation before moving. But it does look nicer. Now, if anyone has a code for Sonic 3D to make it not crap, then that would be fantastic. Hello you. Thanks ever so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to be first to see future Fact Hunt episodes. Click on the bell if you already are to make sure you're notified, and be sure to check out my other episodes. And if you want to be super awesome, check out my Patreon. But thanks again for watching, and until next time friends, I'm missing you already.